The Caltharian Empire had ruled the galaxy for over 10,000 years. Their massive dreadnoughts cast shadows across entire star systems, and their plasma cannons could crack planets in half. When they received the transmission from a small blue world in the outer rim, they barely paid attention. Species designation: human. Planet designation: Earth. Population: 8 billion. Technological level: primitive. Request for peaceful contact and trade negotiations. Admiral Vextar clicked his mandibles in amusement as he read the report. Another backwater species wanting to join our great empire, he said to his tactical officer. Send them the standard ultimatum. Submit or be destroyed. The response from Earth came back within days: we respectfully decline your offer of subjugation. We prefer our independence. The bridge of the Annihilator fell silent. No species had ever refused the Caltharian Empire. Not once in 10 millennia. Prepare the planet cracker, Vextar ordered. We'll make an example of these humans. The planet cracker was the pride of the Caltharian fleet. A massive weapon that could split a world's core and turn an entire planet into an asteroid field. It had destroyed over 300 worlds, and the mere threat of it had brought countless others to their knees. The weapon charged for 3 days, drawing power from the ship's 12 fusion cores. When it fired, the beam should have punched through Earth's crust like a hot knife through butter. Instead, something impossible happened. The beam bent. Report! Vextar roared, his 4 eyes blazing with confusion. Sir, the planet cracker beam it's curving around their planet. Impossible energy readings. They've somehow created a gravitational anomaly that's deflecting our weapon. That's impossible. No species has ever developed technology capable of deflecting a planet cracker. On Earth, in a bunker beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Saracen watched the massive energy beam curve harmlessly past their world. Well, that worked better than expected, she said, adjusting her glasses. Good thing we had 50 years to prepare. The room around her buzzed with activity. Scientists, engineers, and military personnel from every nation on Earth worked together, monitoring screens and adjusting controls. They had known this day would come ever since the first alien probe had been detected in their solar system 5 decades ago. Ma'am, they're charging up again, reported Lieutenant Morrison from his station. Different frequency this time. Let them, Sarah replied calmly. We've got 17 different defense systems online. They can keep trying. Back on the Annihilator, Admiral Vextar was growing increasingly frustrated. Deploy the molecular disintegrator array. Nothing can survive that. The molecular disintegrator was the Caltharians' second most powerful weapon. It broke down matter at the atomic level, turning solid objects into constituent particles. Entire fleets had been reduced to cosmic dust by this weapon. The array fired, sending invisible waves of destructive energy toward Earth. But, as the waves approached the planet, something extraordinary happened. The energy simply stopped, as if hitting an invisible wall, then began to flow in strange patterns around the globe. Sir, they're not just deflecting our weapons, the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. They're absorbing the energy and redistributing it through some kind of planetary grid system. On Earth, Sarah smiled as she watched the energy readings spike across her monitors. Phase 2 initiated. Begin the feedback protocol. Suddenly, the Annihilator shuddered as their own weapon energy came flying back at them, amplified and focused. Shields buckled and systems overloaded as their molecular disintegrator's power was turned against them. Retreat! Vextar shouted. Full reverse. Get us out of range. As the Caltharian fleet pulled back, Earth sent another transmission. Your weapons are impressive, but we've had time to study them. We suggest you reconsider your approach. Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. How had these primitive humans developed such advanced defensive technology? His species had conquered 1,000 worlds, each with millions of years of technological development. Yet none had ever demonstrated anything like what he'd just witnessed. Contact the High Command, he ordered. Tell them we need reinforcements. Lots of them. 3 days later, the largest Caltharian battle fleet in history arrived at Earth's solar system. 500 ships, including 3 planet killers and the Empire's most advanced weapons. Emperor Cal thus himself led the fleet aboard the massive flagship World Ender. "One small planet has made fools of the Empire," Cal thus declared to his assembled admirals. "This ends now. Prepare the reality disruptor." The reality disruptor was a theoretical weapon that the Caltharians had never actually used. It didn't destroy matter or energy, it unraveled the fundamental forces that held reality together in a localized area. Anything caught in its field would simply cease to exist, not destroyed but edited out of the universe itself. As the weapon charged, every screen on the Caltharian ships displayed the same message: "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Jessica Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. You are trespassing in our solar system. Please state your intentions." "Your intentions?" Emperor Cal thus laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Our intention is to erase you from existence, human. Prepare to witness power beyond your comprehension." The reality disruptor fired, creating a purple-black tear in space itself that expanded toward Earth. But, as it approached the planet, something even more impossible than before occurred. The Terran reality began to heal itself, the dark energy flowing away from Earth and dissipating harmlessly into space. "Report!" Cal thus screamed. "Impossible readings, my lord. They're somehow reinforcing the fabric of spacetime itself. The reality disruptor is having no effect." On Earth, in the same Swiss bunker, Dr. Chen wasn't smiling anymore. She was concentrating intensely on her screens, sweat beading on her forehead. "That was close," she muttered. The quantum stability field almost collapsed. "Increase power to the dimensional anchors by 15%. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Morrison called out, "we're detecting massive energy signatures. They've got more ships incoming." "How many?" "All of them. Every ship in the Caltharian Empire is heading our way." Sarah took a deep breath. "Then, it's time for Phase 3. Send the signal to Luna Base." On the far side of Earth's moon, hidden installations that had been built over 5 decades began to power up. Massive cannons, each one the size of a city block, emerged from concealed bunkers. But these weren't ordinary weapons. They were human weapons, designed with human ingenuity and human stubbornness. The first shot from Luna Base wasn't aimed at the Caltharian fleet. Instead, it struck an asteroid in the outer system, and something extraordinary happened. The asteroid began to change, its rocky surface flowing like liquid as nanomachines billions of years more advanced than anything the Caltharians possessed began to reshape it. Within hours, the asteroid had become something else entirely. A massive manufacturing facility that began producing ships at an impossible rate. Not sleek alien vessels, but chunky, practical human designs covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons. "What is that?" Emperor Cal thus demanded as his sensors detected the new facility. "Unknown technology, my lord. They're building ships faster than our automated factories." "Impossible. No species can match Caltharian manufacturing capability." But, on Earth, Sarah Chen was already 3 steps ahead. "The beauty of human engineering," she said to her team, "is that we don't just build things to work. We build them to work under the worst possible conditions, to be repaired with whatever's available, and to keep fighting even when they should be dead." The first wave of human ships launched from the asteroid facility. They looked primitive compared to the sleek Caltharian vessels, but looks were deceiving. Each human ship was packed with backup systems, redundant power sources, and weapons that had been specifically designed to counter every known Caltharian technology. When the 2 fleets met in the space between Mars and Jupiter, the result was unlike any battle the galaxy had ever seen. Caltharian plasma beams that could melt through neutronium armor bounced harmlessly off human reactive plating. Caltharian missiles that could track targets across star systems found themselves confused by human electronic warfare systems that seemed to predict their every move. But the most shocking moment came when a human frigate, barely a tenth the size of a Caltharian dreadnought, rammed straight through the larger ship's shields and hull, emerging from the other side completely intact while the dreadnought broke apart behind it. "How?" Emperor Cal thus whispered. "How are they doing this?" His answer came in the form of another transmission from Earth. "You've been fighting the galaxy for 10,000 years, but you've been fighting species who thought like you. We've been preparing for this fight for 50 years, and we think differently. As the battle raged, more human facilities came online throughout the solar system. Hidden installations on Mars began launching fighter craft that moved in ways that violated everything the Caltharians knew about physics. Weapon platforms on the moons of Jupiter opened fire with beams that seemed to strike their targets before being fired. "My lord," Admiral Vextar reported, his voice hollow with disbelief, "we're losing." "We're actually losing." "That's impossible," Calthus replied, but, even as he said it, he watched another of his planet killers explode as a human torpedo somehow phased through its shields and detonated inside its reactor core. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human commander." "Put it through." Commander Torres appeared on the screen, her expression calm and professional. "Emperor Calthus, I presume. I'm going to give you the same choice you offered us. Surrender, or be destroyed. You dare threaten the Caltharian Empire? We have 1,000,000 ships. We control half the galaxy." "Had 1,000,000 ships," Torres corrected. "Right now you have about 300,000, and that number is dropping fast. You see, we've been tracking your movements for decades. We know where every one of your ships is, what their weaknesses are, and how to exploit them." "Impossible. Our security is absolute." Torres smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "You really don't understand humans yet, do you? We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. We know every trick, every strategy, every weakness that a military force can have. And we've had 50 years to figure out yours." As if to emphasize her point, alerts began sounding throughout the Caltharian fleet. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing everywhere, striking Caltharian bases, supply lines, and civilian targets with surgical precision. "How do you have ships everywhere?" Calthus demanded. "We don't," Torres replied calmly. "We have allies. Turns out a lot of species in your empire aren't very happy with your rule. Amazing how quickly they were willing to join us once we showed them it was possible to win." The truth hit Calthus like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just been preparing defenses. They had been building a galaxy-wide resistance network, using the Caltharians' own communication systems against them, recruiting every oppressed species and every rebel group in the Empire. "This is impossible," he whispered. "One small planet cannot defeat the greatest empire in galactic history." "You're right," Torres agreed. "One small planet couldn't. But we're not alone anymore. The Zentorians remember what you did to their homeworld. The Crystalline Collective hasn't forgotten the mining slaves you took from their systems. The Vapor Lords still mourn the gas giants you stripped bare for fuel. We gave them order. We gave them purpose. You gave them oppression and called it order. You gave them slavery and called it purpose. And now they're taking back what you stole." The final blow came when human ships began appearing inside Caltharian space itself. Not through faster-than-light travel, but through dimensional gates that opened directly into their most secure systems. The Caltharians watched in horror as their capital world's planetary defenses were neutralized in minutes by ships that literally appeared inside their shield perimeters. "Retreat," Emperor Calthus finally ordered, his voice barely a whisper. Full retreat to the core systems. But it was too late. The rebellion he had unknowingly helped create was already there, waiting for him. Ships he had thought loyal turned their weapons on their former masters. Worlds he had conquered decades ago declared their independence and activated hidden weapon systems that human engineers had spent years installing. As the World Ender limped away from Earth's solar system, Emperor Calthus received one final transmission from Commander Torres: "We're not coming after you, Calthus. We don't need to. Your empire is already dead. It died the moment you underestimated the power of beings fighting for their freedom." The irony wasn't lost on him. The Caltharian Empire, which had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force, had been brought down by something they had never encountered before, a species that specialized not in building bigger weapons, but in turning their enemies' strengths against them. 6 months after the fall of the Caltharian capital, the galaxy was in chaos. Freed worlds celebrated their independence while former Imperial forces scattered to the outer rim, forming desperate pirate bands and mercenary groups. But the humans were far from finished with their mission. Commander Jessica Torres stood in the war room aboard the newly constructed Earth Defense Station, a massive orbital platform that served as headquarters for the growing human coalition. The station itself was a testament to human engineering philosophy, built not for beauty, but for absolute functionality. Every surface served multiple purposes, every system had backups, and the whole structure could continue operating even if half of it was destroyed. Status report, Torres requested as her staff gathered around the holographic display showing the galactic situation. 17 former Caltharian systems have requested membership in the coalition, reported Colonel Hassan, the coalition's intelligence chief. But we're getting troubling reports from the Andromache sector. Something big is moving out there. The hologram zoomed in on a region of space that had once been a minor Caltharian industrial zone. Now it showed massive energy signatures and construction activity on a scale that dwarfed anything the Caltharians had ever built. The Sovereign Assembly, Torres said grimly. We knew they'd eventually make their move. The Sovereign Assembly was something the humans had hoped never to encounter. While the Caltharian Empire had been the dominant force in their local galaxy, the Assembly was a multi-galactic confederation of ancient species that viewed the Caltharians as crude upstarts. They had watched the Empire's expansion with mild amusement, but the sudden appearance of humans, and their ability to overthrow established galactic order, had caught their attention. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission on an encrypted channel. It's from Emperor Calthus himself. Torres raised an eyebrow. Put it through. Audio only. The voice that came through the speakers was hollow, defeated, but still carried the arrogance that had once commanded a galactic empire. Commander Torres, I am transmitting from the last free Caltharian stronghold. You have one. My empire is broken. But I fear you have awakened something far worse than anything I ever was. Explain. The Sovereign Assembly has noticed your little rebellion. They are coming, and they make my empire look like children playing with toys. Their weapons don't just destroy planets, they erase entire star systems from existence. They have technology that predates the formation of galaxies. Torres exchanged glances with her staff. And why are you telling us this? Because, Calthus said bitterly, I would rather see humans rule the galaxy than watch it burn under Assembly control. They don't conquer, they harvest. Every living being becomes raw material for their war machines. At least I left my subjects alive. What do you want from us? An alliance. My remaining forces, my knowledge of their capabilities, in exchange for survival. The transmission ended, leaving the war room in silence. Torres stared at the holographic display, where massive assembly construction ships were building something that defied easy categorization. It wasn't a weapon or a ship, it was something that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Colonel Hassan, what do our deep space sensors tell us about that construction? It's hard to explain, ma'am. The structure appears to be some kind of reality engine. Our best guess is that it's designed to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics in localized space. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had been quietly reviewing data on her tablet, finally spoke up. They're building a universe killer. Every head in the room turned toward her. Explain, Torres ordered. We've been monitoring subspace communications for months, trying to understand assembly technology. This isn't just a weapon, it's a tool for reshaping reality itself. They can literally rewrite the laws of physics to make our defenses impossible. Torres felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had succeeded against the Caltharians because they had worked within known physics, finding clever ways to redirect and absorb energy. But if the enemy could simply change the rules of reality itself? How long until it's operational? Based on construction rate, approximately 6 weeks. Then, we have 6 weeks to find a way to stop it. Torres turned to her communications officer. Send a reply to Calthus. Tell him we accept his alliance. And, get me a channel to Luna Base. It's time to activate Project Prometheus. 3 days later, the most unusual diplomatic meeting in galactic history took place aboard a neutral trading station in the Vega system. Commander Torres sat across from Emperor Calthus, flanked by human negotiators and scientists. The former emperor of the galaxy looked older, more tired, but his eyes still held the fierce intelligence that had once conquered thousands of worlds. "Your species surprises me," Caldas said without preamble. "Most civilizations that achieve your level of technological capability become arrogant, predictable. But you remain adaptable." "We had good teachers," Torres replied dryly. 10,000 years of human warfare taught us never to assume we have all the answers." "Indeed. Which is why you might actually stand a chance against the assembly." Caldas activated a holographic projector, showing a detailed schematic of assembly technology. "They call themselves the architects of order. They believe that the universe is flawed, chaotic, and must be perfected according to their design." "How long have they been active?" "Since before the formation of our galaxy. They exist outside normal spacetime, building their perfect universe one galaxy at a time. Each galaxy they perfect becomes a lifeless paradise, every atom in its proper place, every energy pattern following their design." Dr. Chen leaned forward, studying the schematics. "Their technology appears to be based on manipulating fundamental constants. If they can change the speed of light, alter the strength of nuclear forces." "Exactly," Caldas confirmed. "Your defensive systems rely on known physics. They can simply change physics to make your defenses useless." Torres frowned at the display. "There has to be a weakness. No technology is perfect." "There is one limitation," Caldas admitted. "They cannot alter reality and maintain their own existence within that altered space. Their reality engines must be operated from outside the affected area. And they require vast amounts of exotic matter to function." "Exotic matter?" "Matter that exists in quantum superposition, neither energy nor mass, but something in between. It occurs naturally in only one known location, the galactic core." Torres and her team exchanged glances. The galactic core was one of the most dangerous regions of space, filled with black holes, neutron stars, and gravitational anomalies that made navigation nearly impossible. "That's where we need to go," Torres said quietly. "Impossible," Caldas replied. "No ship has ever survived a journey to the galactic core. The gravitational forces alone would crush any vessel." Dr. Chen was already working on her tablet, running calculations. "Not necessarily. If we could build a ship that exists in multiple dimensional states simultaneously." "That's impossible with current technology," Caldas objected. "Current known technology," Chen corrected. "We've been working on some theoretical concepts. Project Prometheus was designed to create a vessel that could survive inside a black hole's event horizon." Torres stood up. "Then, that's our mission. We build a ship capable of reaching the galactic core, we find this exotic matter, and we use it to power our own reality engine." "To what end?" Caldas asked. "To create a zone of space where the laws of physics can't be changed. A sanctuary where the assembly's weapons won't work." Back at Luna Base, the most ambitious construction project in human history began. The ship that emerged from the hidden manufacturing facilities defied every convention of spacecraft design. Instead of a single hull, it appeared to exist as multiple overlapping structures, each one phasing in and out of normal space. "It's beautiful," whispered Engineer Martinez as he watched the final hull sections being assembled. "And absolutely terrifying." The Defiance was more than a ship, it was a mobile pocket universe, capable of existing in up to 7 different dimensional states simultaneously. Its crew would experience multiple realities at once, requiring specially trained personnel who could maintain their sanity while perceiving overlapping versions of existence. Captain Elena Vasquez had volunteered to command the vessel, despite warnings that the psychological stress might be fatal. "Someone has to do it," she had said simply. "Might as well be someone who's already crazy enough to think this plan will work." As the Defiance prepared for its maiden voyage, reports arrived from across the galaxy. The Sovereign Assembly's reality engines were coming online ahead of schedule. Entire star systems were beginning to change as the fundamental constants of physics were altered. "They're starting small," reported Colonel Hassan during the final briefing. "Border systems first, testing their technology. But once they perfect the process." "How long do we have?" Torres asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4 before they begin reshaping core galactic regions. Captain Vasquez reviewed her mission parameters one final time. Journey to galactic core, locate and harvest exotic matter, return with enough material to build our own reality anchor. Simple. Simple in concept, Dr. Chen corrected. But, the journey will take 2 weeks each way, through some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. And, we have no idea what kind of defenses the assembly might have placed around the exotic matter sources. Only one way to find out. Vasquez stood up, shouldering her equipment pack. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity is about to take its strangest road trip ever. The launch of the Defiance was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of accelerating through normal space, the ship simply faded from existence at Luna Base and reappeared near the edge of the solar system, having traveled through folded dimensions that allowed it to bypass the normal restrictions of faster-than-light travel. For the crew aboard the Defiance, the journey was an exercise in controlled insanity. Commander Sarah Kim, the ship's navigator, described the experience in her log. Imagine trying to read a map while looking through a kaleidoscope, and every time you turn the kaleidoscope, the map changes to show a different universe. That's what navigation is like when you exist in 7 dimensions simultaneously. But, the dimensional phasing that made navigation so difficult also protected them from the gravitational forces near the galactic core. Black holes that should have torn the ship apart simply couldn't affect an object that existed partially outside normal spacetime. On the 5th day of their journey, they encountered their first assembly patrol. The alien vessels appeared without warning, materializing from dimensional folds that suggested technology similar to their own. But, where human ships were built for adaptability and survival, assembly ships were works of art, perfect geometric forms that seemed to embody mathematical concepts rather than physical engineering. Incoming transmission, reported Communications Officer Park. They're broadcasting on channels that shouldn't be possible to access. Put it through. The voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything any human had ever heard. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, speaking in harmonics that made their bones vibrate. Aberrant vessel, you travel paths not meant for your existence. Cease your journey and accept integration into the greater design. This is Captain Vasquez of the Earth vessel Defiance. We're on a peaceful mission to the galactic core. Peace is irrelevant. Order is essential. Your species has introduced chaos into our carefully maintained systems. This chaos must be corrected. Good luck with that, Vasquez replied. We specialize in chaos. The battle that followed was unlike any engagement in recorded history. Assembly weapons fired beams of pure mathematics, equations that attempted to redefine the Defiance as a non-existent entity. Human weapons responded with bursts of controlled entropy, introducing random variables that disrupted assembly targeting systems. They're trying to edit us out of reality, reported Tactical Officer Chen. But, our dimensional phasing is making it impossible for their reality engines to get a lock on us. Return fire. Full spread, random pattern. Human torpedo warheads exploded around the assembly ships, but, instead of conventional explosives, they released clouds of quantum uncertainty that made it impossible for the aliens to maintain their perfect geometric forms. Assembly vessels began to fluctuate between different mathematical configurations, their crews apparently unable to cope with imperfection. They're retreating, Park reported with amazement. Actually retreating. No, Vasquez said grimly, watching the sensor displays. They're calling for reinforcements. The next wave of assembly forces included something that shouldn't have been possible, ships that existed in the same multiple-dimensional states as the Defiance. But, where the human vessel achieved this through crude engineering and brute force applications of exotic physics, the assembly ships were elegant, existing in perfect mathematical harmony across multiple realities. Captain, they're matching our dimensional phase. We can't avoid them anymore. Then, we go with Plan B. All stop. Prepare for boarding action. Ma'am? They want to integrate us into their perfect order. Let's see how well their order handles human ingenuity up close. The Defiance allowed the assembly ships to approach and dock. Alien boarding parties flowed through the airlocks like living geometry, each individual assembly creature a perfect crystalline form that moved with mathematical precision. What they found aboard the human ship was chaos incarnate. Human crew members had deliberately rearranged everything to maximum disorder. Tools scattered randomly, systems operating on improvised settings, jury-rigged equipment held together with whatever materials were available. The assembly boarders, who existed in perfect mathematical harmony, were physically unable to process such intentional imperfection. Integration impossible, the assembly commander reported, its voice now carrying overtones of something that might have been confusion. Chaos patterns defy mathematical analysis. That's the idea, Captain Vasquez said, appearing behind them with a jury-rigged weapon that looked like it had been built from spare parts and held together with determination. You want to integrate us? Try integrating this. The weapon fired not energy or matter, but pure randomness, quantum static that introduced uncertainty into everything it touched. Assembly boarders began to lose cohesion, their perfect forms wavering as they tried unsuccessfully to adapt to truly random input. Within minutes, the boarding parties had retreated to their ships and fled, apparently unable to cope with beings who not only accepted chaos but embraced it as a tool. Well, that was educational, Vasquez said as her crew began cleaning up the intentional mess they had created. Apparently perfect order has trouble with imperfect chaos. Ma'am, long-range sensors are detecting massive assembly fleet movements. They're converging on our position from across the galaxy. How many? All of them. Every assembly ship we've detected is heading this way. Vasquez smiled grimly. Then, we better reach the galactic core before they catch up. All hands, prepare for maximum velocity. We're going to punch through every obstacle between here and the core at full dimensional phase. The final leg of their journey took them through regions of space where reality itself began to break down. Near the supermassive black hole at the galaxy's heart, the laws of physics became more like loose guidelines. Matter existed in states that had no names, energy flowed in patterns that defied explanation, and time moved in directions that didn't correspond to any known dimension. But, in the heart of this cosmic maelstrom, they found what they were looking for: vast clouds of exotic matter, swirling around the galactic core in patterns that suggested both incredible age and impossible complexity. There, Dr. Chen said, pointing at the sensor display. That's our target. Enough exotic matter to power a reality anchor that could protect the entire galaxy. And probably enough assembly defenses to destroy 1,000 fleets, Communications Officer Park added, highlighting the energy signatures surrounding the exotic matter clouds. But Captain Vasquez was already smiling. Good thing we're not a fleet. We're just one very stubborn human ship with a crew crazy enough to think we can steal the building blocks of reality itself. As the Defiance began its approach to the galactic core, assembly reinforcements arrived in numbers that defied counting. The space around them filled with perfect geometric forms, each one a weapon capable of reshaping reality itself. This is it, Vasquez announced to her crew. Whatever happens next, remember that we're not just fighting for Earth or humanity. We're fighting for the right of chaos to exist in an ordered universe. The final battle for the future of galactic civilization was about to begin. The space around the galactic core had become a mathematical nightmare. Assembly ships arranged themselves in perfect formations that existed simultaneously across multiple dimensions, each vessel a geometric impossibility that hurt to look at directly. They moved in patterns so precise that they seemed to be following equations rather than tactical doctrine. Captain Vasquez watched the approaching forces on her dimensional display and felt a familiar calm settle over her. This was the moment every human soldier recognized, when the odds became so overwhelming that fear transformed into determination. Status report, she called out. 2,000 assembly vessels in perfect formation, reported Tactical Officer Chen. They're not just surrounding us, Captain. They're creating a mathematical matrix that's beginning to alter local spacetime. Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from her scanning station, her face pale. They're turning the entire region into a reality engine. If they complete their formation, they'll be able to rewrite physics within a sphere encompassing the entire galactic core. How long do we have? 17 minutes until their matrix achieves mathematical completeness. Vasquez nodded grimly. Then, we have 17 minutes to collect enough exotic matter to save the galaxy. All stations, implement Chaos Protocol 7. Around the ship, crew members began what looked like organized insanity. Every system was deliberately thrown out of perfect alignment. Navigation computers were programmed with intentionally contradictory instructions. Weapon systems were set to fire in random patterns. Even the artificial gravity was adjusted to create slight variations in different sections of the ship. The effect on the assembly formation was immediate and dramatic. Their perfect mathematical matrix began to develop flaws as they tried to calculate responses to truly random inputs. Ships that had been moving in flawless geometric patterns suddenly found themselves unable to predict the human vessel's next action. Initiating exotic matter collection, announced Engineer Martinez from the cargo bay. Deploying quantum scoops. The Defiance plunged into the swirling clouds of exotic matter that surrounded the galactic core. The material itself defied every known law of physics. It existed in quantum superposition, somehow being both matter and energy while actually being neither. The ship's specially designed collection systems began drawing the substance into containment fields that existed in 17 different dimensional states simultaneously. Collection at 15%, Martinez reported. But, we're getting massive interference from assembly reality distortion fields. On the bridge, Communications Officer Park was monitoring assembly transmissions with growing alarm. Captain, they're not just trying to destroy us. They're discussing something called the final architecture. Explain. Near as I can tell from their mathematical communications, they're planning to use our presence here as an excuse to implement their ultimate solution. They want to rebuild our entire galaxy according to their design specifications. Dr. Chen's scanner began emitting urgent warnings. Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout assembly space. They're powering up reality engines on a scale I didn't think was possible. How massive? Galaxy-wide. Every star system under assembly control is being turned into a component of a single massive reality engine. Vasquez felt ice form in her stomach. They're going to remake the entire galaxy. Worse than that. According to these readings, they're planning to eliminate every form of chaos, randomness, and unpredictability in the galaxy. Every planet will follow perfect orbits. Every star will burn with mathematical precision. Every living being will exist in predetermined patterns. A galaxy-sized museum, Vasquez whispered. Perfect, sterile, and completely dead. Collection at 30%, Martinez called out. But, assembly ships are beginning to adapt to our chaos protocols. They're using some kind of probability mathematics to predict our random actions. Vasquez made a decision that would have seemed insane to any rational military commander. All hands, abandon chaos protocol. Switch to human protocol. Ma'am? Stop trying to be random. Start being human. The change was subtle but immediate. Instead of following random patterns, the crew began acting on intuition, emotion, and pure human stubbornness. Navigation decisions were made based on hunches rather than calculations. Weapon targeting followed personal preferences rather than tactical algorithms. The ship itself began moving in patterns that reflected human psychology rather than military doctrine. The effect on the assembly matrix was catastrophic. Their mathematical models could account for randomness. Random events followed statistical patterns that could be calculated and predicted. But human behavior wasn't random. It was driven by emotions, memories, dreams, fears, and hopes that no equation could capture. Assembly ships began colliding with each other as their formation broke down. Their reality distortion fields fluctuated wildly as they tried unsuccessfully to process inputs that followed emotional logic rather than mathematical principles. Collection at 60%, Martinez reported. But, Captain, we're getting reports from Earth. Assembly reality engines are activating throughout the galaxy. They're beginning the final architecture. On the main display, reports flooded in from across known space. Star systems were being geometrically redesigned. Planets were being moved into mathematically perfect orbits. Entire civilizations were being edited out of existence and replaced with more orderly alternatives. But something unexpected was happening. In system after system, the reality engines were encountering resistance. The same chaotic human influence that had overthrown the Caltharian Empire was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had learned human tactics were introducing deliberate imperfections into their local space, creating pockets of chaos that the assembly reality engines couldn't process. "Captain," Park called out excitedly, "we're receiving transmissions from the resistance networks we established during the Caltharian War. They're reporting successful disruption of assembly reality engines on over 300 worlds." "How?" "They're using human chaos protocols. Apparently, our little rebellion taught the galaxy how to fight perfect order with imperfect determination." Dr. Chen looked up from her instruments, her eyes wide with amazement. "The exotic matter collection is accelerating. The presence of chaos in local space is destabilizing the assembly's control over fundamental constants. The exotic matter is becoming easier to collect. Collection at 85%, Martinez announced. But, we've got a problem. The assembly is sending in their ultimate weapon." On the display, something appeared that made every human on the bridge question their sanity. It wasn't a ship or a weapon in any conventional sense. It was a living geometric equation, a mathematical entity that existed as pure order given physical form. It moved through space by rewriting the definition of distance, attacked by redefining the concept of matter, and defended itself by temporarily editing hostile forces out of existence. "The Prime architecture," Dr. Chen whispered, reading from the assembly transmissions. "Their most perfect creation. A being of pure mathematical order." The entity approached the Defiance not through normal space but by reducing the mathematical distance between them to zero. One moment it was across the stellar system, the next it was directly in front of them. When it spoke, reality itself seemed to listen. "Chaos entity, you have introduced unacceptable variables into the grand equation. Prepare for correction." The Prime architecture began to sing, not with sound, but with mathematical harmonics that rewrote local physics. The Defiance found itself being edited, its chaotic systems being forcibly reorganized into perfect mathematical relationships. "All systems failing," Chen reported as her instruments began displaying impossibly neat readings. "It's turning us into a geometric equation." But Captain Vasquez had spent her entire career learning that there was no such thing as a hopeless situation. "Dr. Chen, how much exotic matter do we have?" 97% of target collection. "Good enough." "Martinez, prepare to dump everything into the dimensional drive." "Ma'am, that will destabilize our entire existence across 7 dimensions. We might cease to exist entirely. Or we might become something that doesn't follow any mathematical rules at all." "Do it." Engineer Martinez began the most dangerous procedure in theoretical physics, feeding exotic matter directly into the engines that allowed the Defiance to exist in multiple dimensions. The effect was immediate and impossible to predict. The ship began to exist in ways that had no mathematical description. It was simultaneously one vessel and many vessels, large and small, present and absent, real and imaginary. The crew experienced existence from perspectives that human language couldn't describe and human minds shouldn't have been able to process. The Prime architecture, confronted with something that couldn't be reduced to mathematical terms, experienced the first emotion in its billion-year existence: confusion. "This state cannot exist," it declared, but even as it spoke, the words became less certain. "That's the beauty of being human," Vasquez replied, her voice somehow reaching the entity across impossible dimensional states. "We specialize in things that can't exist." The exotic matter infusion had done more than just protect the Defiance from mathematical definition. It had turned the ship into a moving contradiction, a pocket of pure chaos that actively resisted any attempt to impose order upon it. As the ship moved through space, its chaotic influence spread. Assembly reality engines throughout the galactic core began to malfunction as they encountered variables that couldn't be calculated. The perfect mathematical matrix that surrounded the core began to collapse as truly random elements were introduced into its equations. "Collection complete," Martinez announced. "We have enough exotic matter to build a reality anchor that can protect the entire galactic cluster." "Then, let's get out of here and build it," Vasquez ordered. "Plot a course for Earth. Random path, human intuition, maximum chaos." The journey home was unlike anything in the annals of space travel. The Defiance, now existing in an impossible state between order and chaos, moved through space by following routes that couldn't be mapped because they were determined by the collective unconscious of the human crew. They traveled through dimensions that had no names, past stars that existed only in mathematical theory, and around obstacles that were visible only to human intuition. Behind them, they left a wake of cosmic chaos that spread throughout assembly space. Reality engines designed to create perfect order instead began generating beautiful, unpredictable patterns. Assembly ships found themselves unable to maintain perfect formations as their crews experienced the first emotions they had ever known. The Prime architecture itself underwent the most profound transformation of all. Confronted with the undeniable existence of something that defied mathematical description, it began to question the fundamental assumptions upon which its existence was based. For the first time in eons, it wondered whether perfect order was actually perfect at all. When the Defiance finally arrived back at Earth's solar system, they found a galaxy in transformation. The resistance networks that humans had established during the Caltharian War had evolved into something unprecedented, a galactic civilization based on cooperation between chaos and order, randomness and planning, emotion and logic. Status report: Commander Torres requested as Captain Vasquez and her crew were debriefed aboard the Earth Defense Station. Mission successful, Vasquez reported. We have enough exotic matter to build the reality anchor. But, more importantly, we've proven that chaos and order can coexist. The assembly's final architecture is collapsing because they can't account for the human variable. The human variable? Dr. Chen stepped forward, still looking somewhat disoriented from her multi-dimensional experience. The tendency of humans to find solutions that shouldn't work but do anyway. To create order from chaos and chaos from order. To be simultaneously logical and emotional, predictable and surprising. Over the following months, construction began on the reality anchor, a massive station positioned at the galaxy's gravitational center that would ensure the fundamental laws of physics remained stable while still allowing for the beautiful unpredictability that made life possible. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that humanity, the species that had once been dismissed as primitive chaos bringers, had become the guardians of galactic order. But it was a uniquely human kind of order, flexible, adaptive, and always ready to change when change was needed. Emperor Cal, thus, now serving as an advisor to the human coalition, summed up the transformation during the dedication ceremony for the reality anchor. I once believed that true power came from the ability to destroy anything that opposed you. The assembly believed that true power came from the ability to control everything according to a perfect plan. Humans have shown us that true power comes from the ability to turn your enemy's strength against them while remaining absolutely unpredictable. Commander Torres smiled as she watched the reality anchor come online, its exotic matter cores creating a stable zone of flexible physics that extended throughout the galaxy. We didn't set out to conquer the galaxy, she said. We just wanted to be left alone to live our lives in freedom. It's not our fault that freedom turned out to be contagious. Across the galaxy, species that had lived under oppression for millennia were learning to embrace the beautiful chaos of self-determination. The rigid hierarchies of the assembly were being replaced by chaotic democracies. Perfect mathematical order was giving way to the messy, unpredictable, wonderful complexity of life lived without predetermined patterns. In the deepest reaches of space, the Prime architecture continued its impossible journey toward understanding. For the first time in its existence, it was asking questions instead of providing answers. And, in that questioning, it was discovering something that no equation could capture, the joy of learning something new. The galaxy had learned the most human lesson of all, that the best solutions were usually the ones that shouldn't work but did anyway. That perfect order and total chaos were both dead ends, but the space between them was where life flourished. And, in that space between order and chaos, humanity had found its true purpose, not as conquerors or destroyers, but as the galaxy's reminder that the most important things in existence couldn't be measured, calculated, or predicted. They could only be experienced, one beautifully chaotic moment at a time. The war was over. The galaxy was free. And, somewhere in the vast cosmic dance between order and chaos, the human spirit continued to write its own unique melody, a song that could never be repeated but would never be forgotten. Years later, when young beings across the galaxy asked how a single small planet had defeated the most powerful forces in the universe, the answer was always the same: they didn't defeat them. they confused them so thoroughly that victory became inevitable. And, in that confusion, in that beautiful, frustrating, impossible human tendency to find third options when only two existed, the galaxy had found its salvation.